Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters. This is the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Dumisho Greater. On the show today, we take a look at Zwipit. Yes, Zwipit, the company that specializes in reusing mobile phones. We're very, very keen to find out about that. And we'll also discuss the outlook for investment holding company Trencor. And then we'll talk about what Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene may have in store for us from a tax perspective when he announces the budget next week. But before we delve into all of that, do remember that you can send us your comments or any feedback to moneymatters@abn360.com. But first, let's take a look at the trend of the week. Cell phone recycling, now that's becoming increasingly popular around the world. Most devices contain poisonous substances such as mercury. Now those are harmful to the environment if they end up in a landfill. One company that has spotted the business opportunity is Zwipit, a company that pays cash for old phones which they then refurbish and resell. In studio to explain exactly what it is that they do is Nothando, Moleketi, the Director of Marketing and Operations at Zwipit, South Africa. Thanks so much. Exactly explain to us, well, what is it that you do? So if I have an old cell phone, I can come to you and you'll give me cash for it.
That's exactly it. So what we do at Zwipit is we extend the useful life of your old devices. So we'll buy it from you, the consumer. We have an e-commerce platform, zwipit.co.za, and then following that, we refurbish it and currently sell it into international markets. Phase 2 would be selling it directly into the South African market. So that means localizing the price that we offer for your device and then offering cheaper options of mainstream devices to the South African consumer.
So different cell phones, I assume you would pay more or less for, or it doesn't matter, it can be an old cell phone.
So we've got a catalogue that's upward of 1,000 devices that we will pay for, but that is driven by international demand. So if we localize it, some of the devices that internationally may not have demand, but nationally and locally have it, we'll be able to add those. So yes, we buy most smartphones, some feature phones as well.
Okay, so this is something that has been happening all over the world. Let's first find out what need you're responding to. Why did you feel the need to do this? Is it just from an environmental perspective?
Well, I mean, you know, there's two-pronged. Yes, from an environmental perspective, but also because there's a business opportunity. Why we chose South Africa is because, number one, there's high smartphone penetration, then increasing smartphone penetration, which is now driven by feature phones. But that shows there's opportunity of people wanting to move into the smartphone market. So number one is there are smartphones that people are willing to trade. I mean, many people keep those smartphones in their drawer, and now we're saying, let's give you cash. Let's show you the value of that device, which would have previously collected dust. So there's a big opportunity there. And then from a sales perspective, there's the opportunity that people will want more smartphones but cannot afford the full price. So we're saying, why not have a refurbished device that you can use as you would a new device, but it's slightly reduced in terms of price.
Okay, so are you available in South Africa at the moment? I've got a used phone somewhere in my drawer. Where can I come and find you and give you that phone?
So you don't have to come and find us.
Okay.
You have to log on to www.zwipit.co.za, and there you input what device you have, what criteria, what condition it's in. So is it good as new? Is it used? Does it have normal wear and tear? Or is it broken? We pay up to 40% for broken phones as long as they're not water damaged. We then offer you a price. And the difference is that price is guaranteed based on the condition. If the condition is what you said it is, we guarantee that price. Then a courier comes and collects it directly from you. So from your desk, from your door, at your convenience, collect it. We then take it to our facility, confirm that it is the condition that you said it was in, and then we pay you within 10 days of collection.
All right, that sounds like something I might be open to. So this is clearly a growing business. How do you compare, how does South Africa compare with other countries? Has this taken off?
So South Africa, we're still slightly behind, but as an emerging market, I think we are definitely on par. If we compare it to Zwipit Global, we've got operations in other emerging markets such as Turkey, Chile, Mexico. So we're on par with them, but there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I mean, for instance, Spain, they buy back 40,000 devices a month. So there's definitely opportunity here with, 20 million smartphone users. So I think that, yeah, we're on par, it's growing. South Africans are a bit behind in terms of trusting online transacting. So from that perspective, we are talking to retailers to actually having physical presence where South Africans can come and bring their phones to us. So that's our next phase that we're working on. And then obviously looking at the sale opportunity.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm very, very interested in that. I happen to be one of those people that don't like going on the internet, so I'd like to physically go there.
Oh, we'll collect from you.
You'll collect from me. Thank you so much. That was Nothando Moleketi. She's the Director of Marketing and Operations at Zwipit, South Africa. Let's move now to find out what the punt of the week is. It's been a tough time for shipping companies. For example, we've seen the Baltic Dry Index, which tracks dry bulk shipping rates, hit historical lows almost every week this year. But joining us from our Cape Town studios to explain why she's optimistic on the outlook for Trencor, that's a local company that is involved in the container shipping business, is a Finweek contributor, that's Moxima Gama. Moxima, firstly, I am missing you here in Johannesburg, and secondly, why are you so optimistic about Trencor given the state of the economy at the moment?
Well, Trencor, look, it did take a bit of a dip, which I think is personally just healthy for a bull trend. You can't have something that just really goes up indefinitely. And now that it's kind of broken out of that trend, that's formed kind of a falling wedge pattern, I do see some upside, at least in about the long term, in 1 to 3 years, to about the 115 levels. I must emphasize, though, that it hasn't really confirmed a positive breakout yet. We just need to see that, we need to see it break above at least that 75 level to secure those gains to the 115 level. So having, as you can see from the chart, they're having that breakout. We did see a bit of a pullback. It's pulled back this week, which is perfectly normal. It's called a return move, and it should at least bounce on that upper slope of that triangle. And once it does, we could then see it retract back to that 75 or 74.30 level. Of course, my call would be dashed if it goes below that 80, or rather that 61.80 or 60 level. So at this point, I am pretty much positive on it for the long term. I mean, even fundamental reasons do add up for it.
Take Tainer, that's one of the other companies that is in the same industry. During the 2009 financial crisis, they managed to do well. So what is the investment case for Trencor? What differentiates them from other players in the market?
Look, Trencor did quite a good investment decision there, teaming up with that American company, because it did pose to be one of the best when China was going through some economic downturn around 2008. What makes Trencor, at least puts it out in the lead now, is that it is one of the biggest in Africa, and we are an emerging continent, and there's a lot of construction, and with our commodities, raw materials will be shipped. So it does bring out at least a demand, which I think goes alongside with the uptrend that is foreseen for at least another 3 years. So, with Trencor being more reliable and being in the business for so long, it makes sense that they would be at least the leading company to transport all these raw materials in Africa, specifically to India as well, which is an emerging economy as well, too. Sorry.
Moxima, the past month we've seen some interesting moves with the rand. The impact that's most likely to have on this particular company?
Well, it used to have a negative correlation, but what they do is now they're billing in dollars, and Africa has now become a dollar-based currency. So it does work for them if they're billing in dollars and their costs are in rands. This will at least push up their profits. So it does work in line, and with my prediction of a weaker rand, that will at least fuel some upside on their charts.
Moxima, thanks so much for that. That was our Finweek contributor, that's Moxima Gama. Up next, we're going to take it this week's cover story. For the first time in 20 years, we may see the Finance Minister announce an increase in personal income taxes as Treasury tries to find an additional 12 billion rand in revenue to plug that budget shortfall. In studio with me to unpack this week's cover story is Finweek Journalist, that's Shandukani Mulaudzi. Thanks so much, Shandukani. Are we likely to see higher taxes, and who's going to be impacted here? Should I be worried?
We definitely will see increases in taxes. You should be worried. As a consumer, you're probably going to see something change, and you will bear the brunt. Yeah.
I'm worried about the fuel levy and higher taxes there. Is this on the back of e-toll? While doing the story, is this what you uncovered?
No, it's not even because of e-tolls. That's another thing altogether. The fuel levy in South Africa is just very low, and so there's a gap there, especially with the drop in oil prices. So yeah, it's just going to increase because there's a gap and the minister needs to find money.
I'm just wondering what consensus is there on the ground when you were speaking to people. I mean, we're going to have a more in-depth discussion after this, but taxing individuals or taxing companies, did you get a sense that, you know, people were more geared to one than the other?
It's definitely going to go with onto individuals, because the company tax in South Africa is already very high, so there's nothing they can do there. And with the minister trying to go for investment-led growth, there's no way that they can charge companies too much tax, because we can't afford it as a country. Yeah. And also corporate taxes are very unstable, so if we want tax revenues that are stable, we can't go the corporate route. No.
Tax is obviously always one of those issues that affect everyone, so we'll be watching with bated breath to see what the Finance Minister does do. That was the Finweek Journalist Shandukani Mulaudzi. We are heading off into a short break, but don't worry, we'll be right back. When we come back, we talk more about tax. Is the taxpayer in for higher taxes for the 2015 budget? Stay tuned. Do you want to stay? Stay. Stay. Welcome back. You're still watching Finweek Money Matters. Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene already warned in his medium-term budget policy statements in October that we should brace ourselves for tax increases. But in studio with us to discuss what is likely to happen is Mandy. He's the head of the National Tax for Technical at PwC. Angelique Worms, the Director of Global Employer Services at Deloitte South Africa. And Ferdie Schneider, the National Head of Tax at BDO. A lot of tax today. Let's start with you, Carl. What are we most likely to see the minister do? And how far apart is that from what he should do?
Look, I mean, the biggest issue that we'll be facing is around the question of tax increases this year, but no doubt. What we do expect him to do is undoubtedly those tax increases are going to come through. The question is what format they will take, and we're expecting that they're not going to come through on the corporate tax side or significantly on the personal income tax side, and in fact not even on the VAT side. What we're expecting is that he's actually going to use the gap that he's got in the general fuel levy, with the prices of petrol having come down recently and over the last number of months. That presents him with a window of opportunity to significantly increase that fuel levy. So we think he'll get the majority of his tax revenues that he's looking for from there, and maybe a little bits and pieces from the personal income tax side and other taxes as well.
Angelique, is that what's most likely to happen? Are we looking at the fuel levy as where we're going to get the bulk of the revenue coming from a tax perspective?
Absolutely. I agree with Carl. I mean, to adjust the personal income tax would be quite radical, especially since we have capital gains tax and estate duty and donations tax. So we see also that the brackets will be adjusted for fiscal drag and to ensure people still have enough money in their pockets, especially sort of on the lower end of the brackets. And I agree. I mean, to start adjusting the brackets before the Davis Commission has issued their report and made that public, I think is a bit short-sighted.
Ferdie, what do you think? And secondly, just pick up on the point that Angelique just made about the Davis Tax Commission. What are the things that you are looking out for, particularly in that report?
Well, not starting with the Davis Committee at the moment, just adding on to what Kyle has said, and Angelique as well on the fuel levy, I agree with them that there is definitely a potential there. I think the danger there and the caution there is that one actually needs to go back to the basics. Why was the fuel levy initially introduced? Was it not more of a stabilization as opposed to a money or revenue generation tool? And I think that is probably the case, and should we not remain that as the instrument objective? Personal income tax, I do hear the point, and I think it will actually go down very hard should Minister Neni tomorrow and next week rather announce. Time flies when you're having fun.
It's Friday.
It should go down very hard should he introduce high personal income tax rates. My view on that, however, is that he could actually play around with the progressivity scale or curve of the personal income tax. If you're looking at the personal income tax, it's been around for a while. We haven't had increases probably for 20 years, relatively. So, I mean, there is scope there. What's been mooted out in the market is that there's probably scope to introduce a sort of a wealth tax, almost going back to the 80s, 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. That would be devastating. I think an instrument that we've not really touched on is actually an increase in the VAT rate.
VAT rate? I don't know. Let's pick up with Kyle on the VAT rate. I just think, is it not just taxing the poor? Why do people keep going back, or analysts keep going back to wanting to tax the poor? Should we just not be taxing the wealthy? They're the ones with the money.
No, you're right. I think there's some misconceptions around VAT as well. I mean, first of all, it is not regressive. Okay, the World Bank study that's just recently been issued last year shows that it is progressive, although it's only slightly progressive. Okay, it's nowhere near as progressive as our direct tax system. Well, it's not regressive. It is slightly progressive in the sense that the wealthy pay more, relatively speaking, than the poor do on that tax. So that's an important point to note. Yeah, another important point, though, is, as I say, it's not as progressive, or nearly as progressive, as our income tax system. Yeah. So we do need to bear that in mind. But you know, an increase in the VAT rate is not going to happen in the current environment. It would need to be accompanied by other reforms as a package. And when I'm going to say other reforms, it's real reforms around social security. And the reason for that is to compensate the poor for the increased burden that they would have to, relatively speaking, that they would have to bear.
Angelique, jump in there.